So it's Autism Awareness Week this week, so I thought I'd do a little video about that, though actually it'll be about neurodiversity in general. Now, you can't really understand neurodiversity without first understanding something that psychologists call neurotypical. Now, almost all of you watching this video would be classified technically as neurotypical. And what that means is that your sort of emotional and intellectual reactions to things, your thinking patterns and your behaviours would all sort of fall within a given range, an expected range. Now, that's not to say that you're not individuals, everyone's different, aren't they? And within this range, at this end you might have someone who's naturally quiet and reserved and perhaps interested in detail and organisation and things like that. And at the other end, you might have someone who's, very naturally gregarious and outgoing and perhaps creative and less inclined towards organisation and detail and things like that, and a whole load of people in between. And at the end of the day, most of our institutions, our schools, our hospitals, our workplaces, public transport, most of these are designed around the needs of people in this neurotypical range because they're kind of predictable to an extent, And most of our social conventions and behaviours are based upon these as well, because that's what most people are like. Now, every now and again, someone's born who exists kind of outside of this range. They're kind of out here somewhere. Because their thinking patterns and emotional and intellectual reactions and behaviours and things, they're distinctly different. They're nothing like quite often what this group are. And for those people, quite often that's perceived as a disorder, and there's a kind of a medical sort of, it's looked at and diagnosed and all of that. And you've probably heard some of these kind of conditions: obsessive compulsive disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, Autistic Spectrum Disorder, ASD. That's its official title these days. I just call it autism. Now, the thing is, if you take someone who is out here, neurodiverse, and you plonk them into an institution that's been designed for those who are, neurotypical, they struggle. And the reason they struggle is essentially that the environment is just not set up for them, and it causes the appearance of a disorder. But of course, it's not really a disorder. It's just that they're trying to work in an environment which wasn't designed for them. If you took a tropical fish that was designed to live in warm water and you put it in a goldfish bowl, would it have a disorder because it wasn't, because it got ill and died? No. It's just the environment is not designed for it. Now, this might all sound a little bit abstract, so I'll try and explain it using the specific example of autism. My son, by the way, was diagnosed with autism at 4, and I've spent the last 6 years learning a lot about autism. I was diagnosed at 42, and I've spent a lot of time now reflecting back on my life and just identifying really how the autism affected it, for good or for bad, as the case may be. And it's worth noting also that only about 1% of people on planet Earth have autism or are diagnosed with autism. So it's a very small number of people with this particular neurodiversity. It could be a bit more than that, because there are certainly people out there who I would say definitely have autism but aren't necessarily diagnosed. People like my dad. But it's still a very small number of people. And it's also worth noting that there is as much diversity within the autism, within people with autism, as there is in people within the neurotypical range. There's as many different sort of preferences and personality types and all that sort of stuff over here as there would be. It's just that there's a smaller number of people with autism. Now, instead of trying to describe the kind of all the clinical diagnosis terms that kind of get used, I'll give you sort of the main 5 symptoms, if you like, and I'll try and describe them in the way they might appear if you were working with someone with autism, or if you met them, if they're a customer, or if you met them socially. So the first one is poor, or what might appear to be poor social skills. Now, here's what that looks like. Poor or no eye contact. So you might find that they don't look you in the eye, or they just look you in the eye constantly and it's uncomfortable. They might talk too much or not enough. They might not know when to stop talking. They might not be able to read your body language. So if you're saying you're disinterested in what they're talking about, they won't even notice that. They'll just keep on going. And they may have inappropriate facial expressions. So, they may be smiling whilst, it's a serious subject or something. And they're likely to be very overly logical and literal, and very precise in how they're communicating with you. They may pick you up on every last little word you used that was slightly an imprecise use of that term. So it looks like poor social skills, socially awkward, I suppose, is the way to think of it. Secondly, special interests, we'll call this. Now, autistic people, generally speaking, they tend to get very interested in one thing at a time, and they go deeply into this one thing, and they learn everything about it, and they can memorise quite often all the statistics and the facts and all the little details of it, and they love that. And I suppose the characterising thing about an autistic person is that they will often do that to the exclusion of all else. They're, for example, much more interested in that than in people, so they may not care that other people are having a party or going out to lunch. They're much more interested in doing their thing and learning about it. And it can even be to the exclusion of practical things like eating and drinking and sleeping, not usually dramatically so, but it's just different in how they approach their sort of special interest. So they make very good specialists, I suppose. Thirdly, dependence on or insistence upon routines. Now, I'm not talking here about someone who just, likes their routine and gets a bit disturbed when it changes. We're talking here about someone who absolutely depends on their routine. It's their way of bringing some order and some predictability to their life, to their world. And actually, that person, an autistic person, might experience the same kind of level of distress over a sudden change to their routine as you might only ever experience during some kind of quite bad road rage incident, or the death of a pet or something. It really is quite, it's intrinsically tied up with their mental health, their routine and their structure in their day. Number 4, stimming. Now that's a bit of a medical word, I'm afraid. It basically means involuntary physical movements and sounds, such as humming or tapping or rocking or whatever it is. Now, actually, this is the way autistic people express and deal with emotions. So, for example, if you were excited about something, or if you were anxious about something, you might go and talk to someone, and your speed of your voice would speed up or slow down, as the case may be, and you'd be all sort of excited, and that's how you would express and deal with the fact that you were excited. An autistic person, you might find, if they were anxious, that they might be rocking backwards and forwards like this. If they were excited, they might flap their hands because they're excited. That's not to say they all do those things. As I say, there's lots of diversity in the autistic spectrum, and different people do different things, but there'll usually be a physical or audible way that they deal with things. Dependence on, we've done that. Insensitivity or oversensitivity is the next one. So autistic people very often have what you might consider an oversensitivity to certain stimuli, such as light or noise or sound or smells. They can become, they're much more affected by those things, or much less affected, as the case may be, than other people. So, for example, I have a very high sensitivity to light, And the amount of light that comes down in a normal office environment from those kind of weirdly reflective lights is too much for me. I find it quite oppressive and quite exhausting, quite draining. When I'm at home, I work with just a little bit of natural light coming through the window, but it's pretty much dark. And I'm much more relaxed and I'm much more productive when I can work that way. Now, so that's a little sort of rundown of the main kind of components of autism. Now, you might say, yeah, but Randall, you don't seem to suffer with those. You know, you look people in the eye when you're talking to them. You seem quite okay, socially speaking. You know, don't see you rocking backwards and forwards in your chair. Now, the way I'd answer that is by using a reversal. Okay, so I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you wake up tomorrow and 99% of the population of Earth are autistic and only 1% are neurotypical, and you're one of them. So you come into the office, let's say COVID's gone and we're back in the office. You come into the office and you kind of walk past reception, you say, morning, hi. And the person on reception who's kind of working away looks up at you as if you've just kind of, you know, picked your nose in front of them or something, and looks thoroughly confused and a bit alarmed and just goes back to working. Gives you the distinct impression that you've just dropped some kind of social faux pas or something. So you go into the office and you go up to your team who are all sitting there in silence, in a kind of half darkness, working away. Some have got earphones in. You come in, you say, morning, everybody, how are you? How was your weekend? And again, this is met with a complete stony silence, a look of perplexion and perturbed look on all the faces of your colleagues. They don't know what to do. They're all looking at each other. After a while, one of them says, Minecraft. And the one next to them says, oh yeah, what level? 3. Really? How did you get there? And a whole conversation ensues about this kind of computer thing that they're interested in. So you listen for a while and then you say, oh, Minecraft, oh, brilliant. I went to a wedding myself. Oh, it was brilliant. It was a friend of mine from school I've known for years. Oh, it was a beautiful ceremony. And it was a great day. I mean, the party was fantastic. The food was lovely. The DJ played some banging tunes. I just danced the night away, had a few drinks, caught up with my old friends. Oh, it was brilliant. Had a really good time. Again, everyone's looking at you like you've just thrown up on the desk or something. So they kind of politely sort of listen to you and then just go back to working. And then every conversation you have is full of kind of molecular detail about things, you know, and you are just expected to learn all this stuff and memorize it and know how to explain everything in that way. And it's really wearing. Now, if that was your life, if that was what it was like for you, what would you do? Because you basically got two options here. You could either sort of say, oh, this is who I am. You know, I'm a sociable person. I love people. You know, this is it. And the consequence of that will be a life of feeling judged and excluded and probably not having a job and a partner and all that stuff. And there's a fair few people, autistic people in our society, exactly like that. In fact, we probably house a number of them as a housing association. The alternative would be you could just learn their ways and try and fit in, couldn't you? So you could, you know, spend the next 4 months playing Minecraft and just so that you can have a conversation with someone in the office, and you could really make an effort to kind of try and just learn all the details and try and remember all these details and, you know, stuff. And, you know, you work in the darkness even though you really want it to be a bit brighter and lighter. And you could make sure that you've always put the fork back in the fork drawer, never in the knife drawer, because that disturbs people, you know. Now, I do the latter, you know, but I can tell you that it's exhausting being like that, because you're spending every day sort of trying to simulate, if you like, the behaviour of a neurotypical person, because that's what's expected of you, when actually that's not your natural sort of style at all. That's not you. That's not you. And you're trying to do that all the time in every social situation. You're trying to navigate your way through, whilst simultaneously trying to suppress your stimming, the way you would express your emotions, and while simultaneously being bombarded with too much light and noise and other distractions that other people have no difficulty with, don't see as a problem, but to you are all amplified. Now, so that's why I might appear to be much like anybody else, and that's why some autistic people will appear like that. In fact, some autistic people can be absolutely phenomenally socially adept, but actually it's all a carefully crafted act, and they are exhausted at the end of the day because of it. But I suppose, is there a big problem here? Not greatly. I mean, I'm just doing what I need to do to get by. Like we all have to, we all have to modify our behaviour to an extent, don't we, when we come into the office, work with others. But I suppose the question I'd like you to ask yourselves this week is, are you getting the best from autistic and other neurodiverse colleagues who you're working with and who you're interacting with? Because I can tell you there is a lot on offer, tons in fact. I mean, take some examples. Autistic people are naturally logical, rational and evidence driven. They naturally don't see the emotional and social baggage and sensitivities around things, which actually makes them naturally objective when they're looking at things, and a bit dispassionate. And that can be really powerful in a business sense, because they don't worry about, the fact that someone's done this way for 30 years and you're worrying about upsetting them. You just look at it and you go, no, you can remove steps 2, 3 and 4. They're pointless. You don't even need to do them. Just make it better. They're good at dealing with elephants in rooms because they don't even notice the the sensitivity around that. They'll just say, why are we not talking about this? Let's deal with this. Autistic people actually think differently. I, for example, think in videos and imagery. So that means I'm very good at conceptualizing things in my mind, which has a really good application in design, because I can actually kind of see what a whole experience looks like in my mind before I then build it. So that has benefits. Other autistic people, they're better with words, some are better at art, some are better at music. It's all, quite often they have a really strong ability in something. And also our brains are very good at processing high levels of detail. We love the detail. And that means that an autistic person quite often can interrogate and often memorize a whole process from start to finish. They can analyze it and fully absorb it. And then they can identify gaps or errors or problems or opportunities for efficiency or what have you. So they have a terrific impact, really, in business in that sense. And finally, although we might seem a little bit quirky and eccentric, a lot of autistic people have a terrific sense of humour and can bring a kind of a fresh perspective to lots of other aspects of just team working that you would never have thought would need changing, but actually they can bring a different approach and it really works for everyone. So my advice would be, if you don't have an autistic or a neurodiverse person in your team, try and get one, because it can definitely improve just having a different perspective, different approach to things can just bring that sort of benefit. And if you have got one in your team, try and do the following things. First of all, just let them know that they can absolutely be themselves. Tell them that they can, swing their legs on their chair or whatever it is they want to do. And if they want to go and work in a dark corner, just let them. If they want to put their earphones in, don't worry about them being, don't class them as being socially rude or anything like that. They're just doing what they need to do to adjust, and cope with the environment that they're in, which is probably not really designed for them. Another thing, give them specific tasks to do. Don't give them the sort of general, could you have a look at this document and tell me what you think? You're likely to get a full, diagnostic kind of dissertation back from them. Tell them specifically what you want. Be outrageously specific, in fact, in what you want them to do. And they'll love that, and you'll really get the best from them. And then finally, try and embrace their ideas. Now, this can be a difficult thing because autistic people, their ideas can really be quite radical because they do see the world so differently, and they detach all of the kind of, quite often, lots of the emotional and practical aspects. They just go, just do it like this. And the other thing is, it can be put across in a slightly blunt way sometimes. But try not to let that distract you from the fact that the idea itself might actually be very good. And if you're unsure, you can always ask them to go away and sketch up how they would implement this idea. They'll be fine with that. They'll enjoy doing that, and you might be surprised actually with what they come back with. So I suppose in conclusion, we're all different, aren't we? We've got different strengths and weaknesses. And just because our strengths and weaknesses might be very rare or unusual, doesn't mean they're not, valuable or to be understood and accepted. So, we all have the same intrinsic value as human beings, don't we? No one is more valuable than another person. So, it's when we bring our different minds and approaches together that we really achieve things. Businesses without autistic people working in the right areas will suffer. And businesses who don't embrace diversity and all the different approaches and aspects people can bring will suffer. So I suppose, in short, we should just, value everyone, but do that in a considered way. Thanks.